Hello and welcome back to our channel. It's wonderful to have you with us once again. Just like always, this video isn't only meant to entertain you. As you listen, you'll quietly absorb new English vocabulary, while also discovering something that might completely change the way you understand your own mind. Have you ever noticed someone who stopped trying, even when a real opportunity for success was standing right in front of them? Have you ever felt that quiet, exhausted voice inside your own head whispering, "There's no point, nothing will change anyway"? Why do some people simply give up long before failure has even become certain? Today, we're going to uncover the psychological reason behind this pattern, a phenomenon known as learned helplessness. To understand this concept properly, we need to travel back to the late 1960s to a groundbreaking psychological experiment conducted by researcher Martin Seligman. In his study, dogs were divided into different groups and exposed to mild electric shocks. One group had a way to stop the shocks by pressing a lever. Another group, however, had no such option. No matter what they did, the shocks continued regardless of their actions. Later, researchers placed both groups of dogs into a new situation, one where escape was now entirely possible. The dogs that had previously been able to control their environment quickly learned to escape the discomfort. However, something troubling happened with the second group. Even though escape was now perfectly available, many of these dogs simply lay down and accepted the discomfort, making no attempt to escape at all. This puzzling behavior led Seligman to a powerful conclusion. These animals hadn't learned that escape was impossible in this new situation. Instead, they had learned from their earlier experience that nothing they did mattered, and this belief followed them into an entirely different circumstance, even when it was no longer true. Now, here's where this story becomes deeply relevant to human psychology. Researchers soon discovered that people experience an almost identical pattern. When someone repeatedly faces situations where their effort seems to produce no meaningful result, whether in relationships, education, work, or personal goals, their mind gradually begins forming a powerful, often unconscious belief. Effort doesn't matter, so why bother trying at all? This explains a deeply important and often misunderstood human behavior. We frequently assume that people who stop trying are simply lazy, unmotivated, or lacking ambition. However, psychology suggests something far more complex and compassionate. Many individuals stop trying not because they lack desire, but because repeated experiences have quietly convinced their mind that trying no longer leads anywhere meaningful. Consider a student who repeatedly studies hard, yet consistently receives poor grades due to circumstances beyond their control, perhaps an unsupportive environment or inadequate resources. Over time, this student may stop studying altogether, not from laziness, but because their brain has gradually learned that studying appears disconnected from actual results. The same pattern often applies to people in difficult relationships, unstable jobs, or challenging financial situations, where repeated setbacks eventually erode their belief that meaningful change remains possible. So, is there hope for someone caught within this exhausting cycle? Fortunately, yes, and this is precisely where psychology becomes genuinely empowering rather than simply theoretical. Seligman himself later discovered that this pattern isn't permanent or unchangeable. Through consistent, small successes, moments where effort clearly and directly leads to a positive outcome, the brain can gradually relearn that actions do, in fact, matter. This is why psychologists often recommend starting with small, achievable goals when someone feels trapped in helplessness, rather than immediately pursuing large, overwhelming challenges. Each small success acts almost like gentle evidence, slowly rebuilding a person's belief that their actions genuinely influence outcomes. Over time, this rebuilding process can restore something incredibly valuable: a sense of control, confidence, and renewed motivation. This understanding carries a profoundly important lesson for how we treat both ourselves and others. Rather than assuming someone who has given up is simply weak or unmotivated, we might instead recognize that their mind may have quietly, gradually learned helplessness through repeated, painful experience. And rather than harshly criticizing ourselves during moments of exhaustion or defeat, we can instead offer ourselves patience, recognizing this pattern for what it truly is: a learned response, not a permanent truth about who we are. Understanding this concept also empowers us moving forward. If we recognize early signs of this pattern within ourselves, whether in our career, relationships, or personal ambitions, we can consciously seek out small, meaningful successes, deliberately proving to our own mind that effort genuinely does lead somewhere worthwhile. Let's briefly recap the powerful insights we've explored today. Learned helplessness develops when repeated experiences convince someone that their actions no longer influence outcomes, causing them to eventually stop trying altogether. Even in situations where success remains genuinely possible, this pattern applies not only to animals in psychological experiments, but profoundly to human behavior as well, shaping motivation across education, relationships, and personal goals. Fortunately, through small, consistent successes, this deeply rooted belief can gradually be rebuilt, restoring genuine motivation and hope. Isn't it remarkable how understanding a single psychological concept can completely transform the way we view both our own struggles and the struggles of those around us? If today's exploration into human psychology resonated with you, please consider joining our growing community by hitting that subscribe button so you never miss another journey into the fascinating world of the human mind. Thanks so much for spending this time with us, and until next time, take care.